Here's my full experience of drinking a gallon of water a day, the 10-year update.
Oh, hi, Mark.
What's up, Freccero fam? Welcome back to my channel where I like to experience everything that life has to offer. Pretty crazy to say, but 10 years ago, I did a unique experiment where I drank a gallon of water a day for 40 days. And I'm gonna be honest, that video and that whole experiment genuinely changed my life for two different reasons. One, I did not expect that drinking a gallon of water a day, just drinking water, had that profound of an impact on my life, mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. And two, which is also cool, that was also the first video I ever uploaded on YouTube that got over 100,000 views. Although I will say, I can't remember exactly, it's either that video or this video where I talked about living out of my van. Which is also kind of crazy to look at because that van life video I posted in 2014 when I was touring the country for DJing, living out of my van, working on my debut album, pretty cool. But anyway, getting back to the main point of this video, as most of you know, I post a lot of vlogs, experiments, challenges, weird things that I do, and a lot of them usually do revolve around health and fitness. And a lot of times I have people saying, hey Mark, well, this one supplement's very expensive, or I don't have time to go to the gym and do these grueling workouts. But I gotta say, just drinking water, and I might even say drinking more water, it changed my life. And a year after doing that experiment, I posted a follow-up video talking about my thoughts, my theories, and what I've learned in the past year. And now, 10 years later, want to do another follow-up video because, being honest, when people ask me like, hey, what are your tips about just being healthy? Among a lot of the typical ones, like make sure you get good sleep, make sure you work out, eat healthy, etc., one of my top answers is drink more water. It is that simple. And so for this kind of interesting 10-year follow-up video, I'm gonna answer the top 27 questions I've gotten regarding that experiment and drinking water in general. Number one, do I still do it? 100% yes. I drink now between 1 to 2 gallons of water every day. And in the beginning, I'm going to be honest, when I did that experiment, it was tough. I was not used to drinking that much water. I had to force myself to constantly refill my water bottle and everything. And I will say over time, I have developed techniques, if I'd even call it that. Like, for example, if I have a protein shake, I fill this entire blender bottle up with water, right? And I put just 1 scoop of protein. As opposed to having, like, say, a smaller blender bottle, I always fill this up. In addition, I have protein before I work out and also after I work out. So there's 2 blender bottles right there. I also have a ton of water, like say I want to make a greens shake or whatever, right? So I'm constantly just slugging water all day, every day. Number 2, are the benefits legit? And what I mean is, what were the benefits? Were they that good? Because in that video, I did kind of talk about how much it genuinely changed me. And if you look at the comments, a lot of people commented, I guess starting out at one of the benefits of cosmetically, they're like, hey, you actually look better. Like from the start of that video, and I'll post it in the description if you want to watch the OG video, the original video. In the start of that video to the end of it, your skin looks better. You actually look better. So one, cosmetically, obviously really good for your skin and a lot more. Another thing is physically. I will say that it's not like I, bulked up like crazy, but I did notice I could work out harder. I mean, it makes a lot of logical sense. Like logically, I'm having more water, I'm more hydrated, so I could push myself harder in the workouts. I also noticed I could work harder, that in general, that when working on music or filming videos, that I found that I could just kind of push myself a little bit more. It was crazy that just the hydration alone, again, I have to stress this point, and this is what I kind of like about this video and that experiment, is that sometimes I do try out a very expensive supplement. Like I said, sometimes I try something that's very hard to kind of replicate for some people, depending on your schedule, your time, etc. But with this, you're just drinking more water, and it's crazy the profound effects. I mean, if anything, I think drinking, like say, a gallon of water a day, or that much water a day, has a better effect and had a better effect on me than some supplements that I've bought, spent my money on, and tried, right? Just drinking water has profound effects. Another thing I will say is the mental benefits. I noticed I could think clearer. I felt happier throughout the day. It is kind of interesting. All the benefits that I have talked about in that video and the 1-year follow-up video and now are all true. I mean, I'm not sponsored by water, obviously, on this video, but I do have to stress that point that just drinking more water throughout the day is crazy when it comes to the benefits. Number 3, what kind of water did you drink? This is a big question I've gotten a lot. Like, was it spring water? Was it distilled? What type of water was it? All I really did is fill up my water pitcher, my water filter from the tap, put it in my blender bottle or in my container. That was it. Pretty straightforward. I don't like the idea of buying like a lot of water bottles. I also say I don't have just straight tap water. I will talk about that a bit later in this video. I like to have water from the tap, but make sure it's filtered. Number 4, do I also have electrolytes? The answer is yes. So this one supplement, I have no affiliation with them. I wish I did. In case they want to sponsor me, please do. This is Trace Minerals, 40,000 volts. This is basically high quality concentrated electrolytes. So you just kind of squirt some in any kind of bottle that you want, and you're adding electrolytes in. There's also no calories or anything. So I also like that because I do intermittent fasting. And so I find, like, say if I have liquid IV, there's a lot of sugar and stuff in liquid IV that I don't like. And it does break your fast because it has calories in it. With this, I can just squirt some in any bottle with water. Boom, that's it. I find this is really helpful. I think, one, just getting more electrolytes is good because I'm working out and my workouts are brutal. But also, 2, because I do intermittent fasting, I'm not really getting any nutrients, so to speak, until I actually start eating. My typical intermittent fasting schedule, in case you're curious, is when I wake up, I have black coffee and water with these electrolytes. That's kind of the way I start off my day. And then I break my fast with the food that I have before I work out. That's kind of my typical schedule. So I will say I do have electrolytes with the water. When I did do that experiment though, I did not. I just had straight water. And I will say having like the trace minerals or electrolytes with the water, I've been doing it for about a year, 2 years now, I'd say. And it's crazy the difference. Like, it's almost supercharged. It's amazing. Gotta say, if you're planning on drinking, like, say, a lot of water, or like, say, if you do intermittent fasting, where you only really drink water for the most part, add some electrolytes in. It's a huge help. And number 5, on that note, what is the interaction with water and intermittent fasting? I will say this, Hugh Jackman even talked about this, that one of the best things you can do when it comes to intermittent fasting is to truly just stick with water. Now, like I said, I do have water and black coffee. I know there are some people who say, oh, I'm gonna have water with like a small snack or whatever. The truth is, if you're doing intermittent fasting, just stick with water or black coffee, and make sure, I stress the word black coffee, that you're not adding in milk or sugar or creamer or anything. Truly just black coffee and just water. And I gotta say, when it comes to intermittent fasting, touching upon what I talked about in the past point, I did notice that if I actually do intermittent fasting, as I do almost every day, it's rare when I don't do intermittent fasting, I just have water. But when I had water, or when I do have water with the electrolytes, I find it does perk me up more. I find it gives me a little more energy. I find I can just focus and just, operate better. Like right now, I'm filming this video while fasted. I typically film my videos, in case you're curious, almost around the time when I wake up. Like I wake up, do a cold shower, do some affirmations, have a nice, amazing cup of black coffee, which is usually cold, by the way. I don't like hot coffee, just being honest. And then, at that point, I kind of wake up a little bit, maybe do some work on my computer, and then I film these videos. And I find that when I have the electrolytes with the water, it helps a lot. So if you are doing intermittent fasting and you're doing it in the proper way, if I'd word it like that, where you are truly just having just water, maybe some black coffee, but mostly just water and black coffee, add some electrolytes in. Again, I cannot suggest enough the Trace Minerals supplement. Again, I'm not sponsored by them. I wish I was. Maybe someday I will be. I hope I will be. But that is one of the best supplements to add in electrolytes that does not have any other like sugar or dye or anything. It also has no calories, so it's perfect for intermittent fasting. Number 6, does this allow you to build more muscle? Yes, but I'm gonna say indirectly. It's not like that by having a ton of water, all of a sudden your muscles pump up. Obviously, we know that, but I might as well mention it. I found it was indirect. And what I mean is, as you can imagine, if, let's say, I go to do a workout and I'm dehydrated and I'm just not in the zone, I can't lift as much weight. I'm not pushing myself as hard as I could. And I found that when having a gallon of water a day, when I did that experiment, it was crazily noticeable. Even looking back on it 10 years ago, crazily noticeable the jump of how much harder I could push myself. And as you can imagine, if I'm lifting more weight, if I'm working out longer, if I'm working out harder, if I'm getting closer to failure, more and more often, and all this kind of stuff. If I'm achieving better progressive overload, all these kind of factors, inevitably and indirectly, might as well stress, I am going to be able to build more muscle and might as well say as well, build more strength. And so I do want to say that because I feel like that when it comes to building muscle, I know that's a big thing. A lot of people Google how to build muscle, and there's a lot of different ways. I mean, there's entire YouTube channels and blogs and books dedicated to the subject, and there's been a bajillion studies talking about everything from taking creatine monohydrate to having more protein throughout the day to progressive overload to different eccentric versus concentric movements and the way that you should do each one. There's so much science to this, but in general, I think one of the simplest things you can do to give yourself a better edge in the gym when you're working out, whether you're trying to build muscle or let's say you're running marathons, whatever your goal is, drink more water. Number 7, did you lose weight? Yes, but there's a couple unique things to this. One is that in general, I've learned, and I remember reading about this in studies, that for a lot of people, when you're actually hungry, or when you feel hungry, you're actually just thirsty. You're dehydrated and you have to drink water, right? So that's one thing I want to say kind of right away that is a big thing I learned, not even just in terms of like reading it in a book or on a blog or from the study, but anecdotally or my own personal experience or subjective experience that I noticed when doing that experiment, like, wait a minute, a lot of these times when I was hungry and I'd grab a snack, I actually wasn't hungry. I was thirsty and I just needed water. They've also found that by drinking a lot of water, people tend to eat a bit less. If you're looking at, like, say, caloric restriction or eating less throughout the day because you're trying to lose weight, drinking a gallon of water a day or a lot of water can definitely help you with that. One thing I do want to mention, though, on the flip side, and this is something you probably know, but I do want to mention it. I know some people weigh themselves like an insane amount of times. I know some people weigh themselves 3 or 4 times a day. Keep in mind, as we all know, your weight does fluctuate and water weight is a thing. So as you can imagine, if let's say I throughout the day have a gallon and a half of water, as opposed to let's say half a gallon of water another day, that's a gallon and a half of liquid in my body that's water weight. So I will say that remember that if you are drinking a lot of water, to be aware that some of that weight, like say if you do weigh yourself, for example, is going to come from the water. But in general, I do find they have found that by drinking a lot of water, it does help with caloric restriction and a lot more that you can, and for most people, might potentially lose weight. Number 8, what water bottle do you use? This is actually a really important one. I know it sounds weird, but this is something I wish someone told me 10 years ago. I can't remember what the size was. It was like a 24, 25 ounce water bottle. And I remember doing the math out being like, okay, like it's 128 ounces of water equals a gallon. So I had to refill that. I think it was like, what was that? 5 times ish, give or take, because it's 25 or 26 ounces, about 5 times a day. And I found that just that alone made it harder. That being said, so now, like I said, I use this for anything that's water plus other stuff. So before I work out, I have like say a protein shake, put it in this. This is about 25, 26 ounces, I think. All right, so I have this. I also have this post-workout for another shake. I then have a third shake sometimes of like say Power Greens from Trader Joe's. I take the Power Greens, blend it with water, and I just chug it like a big shot to get a bunch of vegetables in right away. So I have this any single time I'm having a supplement. Even if it's like say like 1 mini scoop of pre-workout, one pro tip is I still fill this up all the way to the top. Because I have some people saying, hey Mark, wait a minute. You're only putting 1 scoop of protein powder. Do you need to fill it all the way up? The answer is yes, because it does kind of force me to drink more water. The second thing I do, and this is again something I wish someone told me earlier, is I have a second jug, which is this one. And this is a half gallon. In this jug, I only put water and the electrolytes. The reason why is that way I don't have to clean it as much. I mean, I still clean it, of course. You want to make sure you do. But the blender cup has, or the blender bottle has, water plus other stuff. This is just pure water. And what's good about having a half gallon is I find I drink way more water just with the fact that I only have to fill this up twice. It's a half gallon. I mean, if let's say you want to go all out, I know a lot of people do. I've seen online, they have these like gallon jugs that just look like, these big jugs, and you could just drink out of that. And I remember I used to do that where I'd only have a gallon jug and I fill up once. And in my mind, I'm like, hey, this is kind of easy. It's already filled up. I just have to make sure that by the end of the day, this thing's gone. And I will say that in the beginning, I've mentioned this before, that it was kind of tough. But after a while, I'm just so used to it, I don't even think of it. One last thing I will say though, and this touches upon a lot of other subjects, so I'm kind of scraping the surface here. I do know that plastics and especially microplastics are a big issue right now. They're a big issue. So I will say, you may notice this, even though out here might not look it, but this is metal, right? This is actually metal. And then this is also metal. I purposely now do not use any plastic water bottles. I know it sounds a bit kind of like conspiracy-ish, like, oh, but I mean, there have been a lot of studies showing the dangers of microplastics and everything. So I figured, hey, if I can be a little bit healthier and I can be a little bit safer, why not just buy a metal one as opposed to a plastic one? I did look into getting a metal full gallon. I'm not gonna lie, maybe post in the comments if you can find a good one. I did not find any good metal full gallon water bottles. I don't know why. I tried a couple and they were just super heavy, or they were like these like industrial, almost kind of felt like it was like an army type item. And I'm like, okay, this is too intense. I just want something simple. I will say I do kind of miss, I'm not gonna lie, the plastic jugs that I used to use, the plastic gallon jugs, because they were a lot more convenient and easy. But again, trying to avoid plastic, so I typically have just metal water bottles. Number 9, what are your thoughts on tap water and did you drink it? This is a controversial topic. And so this is all I'm gonna say. When I did that experiment, I did drink mostly tap water. It was just easy. I turn on the tap, I fill it up, I turn it off. Then I saw a lot of reports talking about the conflicting results of, is tap water actually good for you or not? And then I saw Andrew Huberman's podcast about water, and to kind of sum up what he said in that podcast, and this is a bit of hearsay, but to briefly quote what he said, look, I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not trying to sound like one of those people, but there have been studies to show tap water is not the best thing for you, and you're way better off using a filtered type device, a water pitcher like a Brita, for example, whatever you use, that basically you filter the tap water before consuming it. So now I will say I technically, because I put that in quotation marks, technically drink tap water in the sense that I do get it from the tap, but I make sure it's filtered. So whether I'm using, let's say, a water filter somewhere, or let's say I have my own Brita, that let's say I have the tap water go into the Brita, it gets filtered, and then I drink it. Either way, I make sure that if I am drinking tap water specifically, it's always filtered before I consume it. Number 10, do you ever drink more than just a gallon? Yes. Now, like I mentioned right in the beginning of this video, I drink between 1 and 2 gallons of water a day. And I will say this, for me now, I don't necessarily sit there and like measure it out. It's not like I'm like, oh, I have to hit a gallon. Sometimes I only drink a half gallon of water in a day, to be honest. Other times it's closer to 2. So it's not like I'm as strict. Like when I did that experiment, I forced myself to drink a gallon of water a day for 40 days. And there were times, which was horrible looking back on it, that I just had one of those days, or I forgot, or whatever. And it'd be like 8 p.m. And I'm like, oh shoot, I've only had half a gallon. And at 8 or 9 p.m., I'd chug or try to drink as quick as I could a half gallon of water. And I'd be waking up all night having to go to the bathroom. It was pretty bad looking back on it. There was a couple points. I'm like, shoot, I still have a quarter of a gallon of water to go, but it's 11 p.m., but I have to do it. I told myself I'd do it. A gallon of water a day for 40 days. I told myself I would do it. Was kind of frustrating. Now I'm not as like strict on that, but I will say I do typically, I'd say most days, drink about a gallon, but if anything, a lot more. Like I said, when it comes to this blender bottle, it does add up. Even if, like say, I'm putting in, and this is a good pro tip to drink more water, 1 scoop of protein, I make sure to still fill up this entire thing, right? So that means, like, I'm having 27 ounces of water, let's say 25. I think it's a little more than 25, but let's say 25 to round it. Let's say I have 25 ounces of water with a protein shake before I'm work out and after. That's 50 ounces of water right there, right away. I'm almost halfway, or I'm almost at a half gallon, plus all the water that I drink in the morning. And then in addition, this is the coffee that I have. Shout out to McGee's Diner in Waterloo, New York. Phenomenal diner. Oh my God, incredible diner. Anyway, got this coffee cup, and I make sure that I don't just have a shot of espresso in the morning, but I make the biggest cup possible. I have a Keurig, so I make the biggest cup possible with the Keurig. And that way, even though, yeah, like, you know, maybe it's super diluted, I'm technically having a bit more water. So I'm using these tricks to make sure I'm just, in general, drinking more water. And then, of course, like say when I'm working out, I drink a lot of water. When I'm, like, say, getting ready to film, as you can imagine, I don't want to have wicked bad cotton mouth, so I make sure to drink a lot of water while filming. All these tricks do kind of add up. And I think that's a big thing I'll say, that in general, with all of these tricks, all these different ways I'm consuming water, whether it's like Huel, which I've already done videos about, or whether it's with protein powder, whether it's with greens, whether it's with whatever, I'm constantly having a ton of water. Number 11, is too much water bad for you? This is probably by far the number one question I get. And I did get when doing that experiment. I even get it now when I tell people I drink a lot of water, like 1 to 2 gallons of water a day. Here's the truth. So first off, I might as well say this. Let me back up, actually. I'm not a doctor, and I never pretend to be one in any of my videos. I do have to stress that. And when it comes to drinking too much water, I'm going to be honest, you really have to try. We have seen reports, and this is one of those things that kind of stinks about like the news and everything, that you hear these news reports sometimes, and you're like, oh my God, like they died from drinking too much water. You have to try really, really hard or be in a very unique situation for that to happen. Like I heard about one marathon runner, for example, which is super sad that they ran an entire marathon, apparently was not having enough electrolytes. When they got done, drank a ton of water, and they had too much water versus their electrolyte content, and unfortunately they passed away. That was one example. Another example I heard of, which I believe the term is hyponatremia, I think is how I pronounce it, don't quote me on that exactly, is somebody was doing one of those frat things where they're getting ready to be in a frat, and it was the kind of like the pledging period, and the frat made them drink 2 gallons of water in 15 minutes, and they died from that. As you can imagine, in these scenarios, these are very specific scenarios that you have to like I said, try really, 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 really hard to have an aggressive amount of water. And so I do say for a lot of people that I know we hear these articles, and a lot of times people, I think, get scared to do a given thing. Like I know this from YouTube, and a lot of people know this from YouTube or from blogging or news articles when it comes to clickbait titles. If I say, here are 5 reasons why you shouldn't do something, or 5 reasons why you should, the video saying why you shouldn't do something gets a bajillion more views. Probably not surprising. So I want to say that when it comes to this, that yes, is it possible for you to drink too much water? Yes. The answer is yes. But you have to really, 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 really try. And for most people, unless you have a certain health condition or whatever, drinking more water, even up to a gallon, is usually very, very safe and incredibly good for you. Number 12, does milk count as water intake? In some cases, yes. Now, I did look into this. The milk is apparently about 90-ish% water, give or take. So there is a lot of water when it comes to milk. And I'd say other things as well, like watermelon, hence the name, has an insane amount of water. There are other ways to get your water source. Like I mentioned, when it comes to the black coffee, for example, I don't just have a mini shot of espresso in the morning. I make sure on the Keurig settings, when it comes to like small, big, large, to pick the largest one. That way I can have a ton of liquid in addition to the coffee. Number 13, what about seltzers? Now, when it comes to seltzers, I might as well stress, I'm talking about non-alcoholic seltzers, not alcoholic seltzers. It is kind of funny how like there are times where I'm talking to a friend and I'm on the phone and I'm like, yeah, I'm having a seltzer right now. What are you doing? They're like, wait, you're drinking? It's 2 p.m. And I'm like, no, like a non-alcoholic seltzer, right? I'm talking about things like bubblies or liqueurs or these kind of sparkling waters that we see. They have found that, yes, these do actually help when it comes to being hydrated. And if, let's say you're the type of person, and I get it, who's like, hey, Mark, I just can't drink a lot of water. It's just tough for me. I need something flavored. These can help with that because a lot of them are no calorie, no sugar. They're just like some added flavors or natural flavors or whatever. One thing I do want to say is keep in mind the carbonation can make you a bit bloated. It affects everybody a bit differently, but this is also a really good way as well, I will say, to kind of get over a soda craving. I know a lot of people can be addicted to soda, that they're obsessed with, like, say, drinking Diet Coke, for example, I know is a big one, or Sprite, whatever kind of your choice is, that having sparkling water, again, bubblies are probably one of my favorite brands. The Trader Joe's sparkling waters are really good, actually, like the black cherry vanilla from Trader Joe's, insane. LaCroix, I know, although I don't like LaCroix. I hate to say it, like all those memes about LaCroix, like LaCroix tastes like a strawberry with a low battery, or like a hint of lime or whatever. I hate to say it, I think they are true. I don't really care for LaCroix. So for me, the main ones that I buy are the bubblies. Love bubblies, like the strawberry one hits, the blackberry, the grapefruit. Oof, love bubblies. And then in addition, the Trader Joe's, specifically black cherry vanilla one, really good. Number 14, what are the effects when it comes to drinking a gallon of water a day with alcohol and hangovers? Probably not surprising. It helps a lot. One of my strategies, if I had to say it like in that way, and I will do a video on this channel about my strategies to not be hungover, because I have like a bunch of techniques I use, because not only am I big into health and fitness, but I also do party a lot. You may notice that on this channel, there's a bit of the yin yang of me going out, drinking, partying, going to festivals, nightclubs, etc., but also me talking about supplements and health and nutrition and longevity, that when it comes to alcohol and hangovers, drinking a lot of water definitely helps. Not surprising to anybody. We've all been there where you wake up with like the worst cotton mouth of all time because you drank too many beers or had too many shots or too many mixed drinks and had no water. I do try to balance it. I will say that even if, like, say I'm drinking a ton of water or I had drank a lot of water throughout that day, that every drink I have, I will then try to have 1 glass of water or cup of water. So for every drink, I'm also getting some water. Yes, you do go to the bathroom a lot because alcohol is also a diuretic, so it's kind of annoying, but much rather do that, be hydrated, and wake up feeling a lot better the next day. Number 15, how do you deal with going to the bathroom? This has actually been a big question I've gotten, and it makes sense, especially if your body and you're not used to drinking that much water. When you first start doing it, when you first start like forcing yourself and making an effort to drink a lot of water throughout the day, the big thing that's annoying is you do go to the bathroom a lot. And it's sometimes every, 20, 30 minutes. And you're like, wait a minute, is my bladder just super small? Like, what's going on? And especially for me, if I have one of those days where I'm just slugging water throughout the day, given the working out and the protein shakes and the green shakes and everything, I'm going to the bathroom nonstop. It is frustrating. I'd say out of anything, this is the one biggest side effect, negative aspect about drinking this much water is, as you can imagine, it's a lot of liquid, so you go into the bathroom a lot, and that can be frustrating. One thing I do got to say is make sure, and they have found this in some studies, that if you drink too much water before going to bed, as you can imagine, it's going to wake you up a lot to go to the bathroom, and that can disrupt your sleep. And as we know, especially with people like Dr. Matthew Walker promoting this, sleep is mind-blowingly important. So I will say, if you are doing this, try to almost like front load your day, if anything, with more water, or try to space it out. So by the time you go to bed, you're not having to slug water. Like I said, with that experiment, it was the worst when it would be like 9 or 10 p.m. and I realized I only had X amount of water that day, and I had to have more because I forced myself to do this for part of the experiment. Way better off front loading your day with that water. Also, Andrew Huberman did talk about this as well in one of his podcasts, which is kind of interesting. When it comes to, like, say, having to get up and go to the bathroom at night from, like, say, just drinking a lot of water, you're way better off sipping your water at night. Apparently, there's some weird, I don't know if it's a psychological thing or physiological thing or a combination of the two, that if, like, say, I have, like, say, a cup of water, and right before I go to bed, I just chug it, I'm more likely to have to get up and go to the bathroom than if I sip it, like, say, over the course of a couple minutes. There is something that he talked about where the faster you drink water at night before going to bed can actually affect you having to get up and go to the bathroom. Kind of interesting. Again, I don't know if that's like a psychological thing, a physiological thing, or the combination of the two, but a little cool pro tip that, like, say, if you are drinking water and you're having it, like, say, at night before going to bed, try to sip it or drink it more slowly, and that will hopefully allow you to sleep a lot better without having to get up every few hours. Number 16, is this bad for the environment? This is also another one I've gotten. I'm going to say, depending on how you go about it, hopefully not. Like I said, I showed you. Show you one more time. I have this and I have this, and I refill them. I don't like using water bottles in terms of the plastic ones that we all know of. I don't like constantly buying them. If I'm traveling, like I was just in Mexico City and Tulum, for example, I posted that vlog video. I did go out and buy the gallon jugs of water, right? I did buy them just because obviously I didn't want to consume the water there from the tap. So there are some unique exceptions, but for me, for the most part, I do try to avoid any kind of like plastic water bottle that I drink it and immediately throw it away. I make sure to have these water bottles, so I'm constantly refilling them. Number 17, what about the mental benefits? Like, talk about that. That's a big thing I've gotten a lot as well, because when I did that experiment, that was a big one that I feel like a lot of people were interested in. That when I talked about, like, yeah, I can work out harder, I can work out longer, I feel better, my skin's better, I think a lot of people were like, yeah, I can see that. You're more hydrated. Like I can see that. But the mental benefits for a lot of people were like, wait, mentally you feel better. When drinking that much water, not just a normal amount, but a gallon of water a day, it was crazy how much better I felt. It was so noticeable, so clear that for whatever reason, I felt I could focus more. I felt I had more energy mentally. I felt that, let's say, when going from one task to the next, I could just do it seamlessly. I just felt more in the zone, I felt like I could just bring my A game a lot better. And again, it was kind of cool that all I was doing was drinking more water. That's it. It's kind of it's one of those unique things that I know a lot of times people have asked me, like, hey, Mark, what are the different nootropics you take or smart drugs? In case you don't know, nootropics or smart drugs are cognitive enhancing supplements that allow you to focus better. Like caffeine is the most notable, but there's a lot of other ones like paracetam, there's modafinil. I know urolithin A has some nootropical effects I've noticed. There's a lot of supplements out there. If you go like Nootropics Depot or whatever, there's a bajillion of them. I mean, I could go on all day about nootropics. That being said, sometimes the most simple things are the most powerful nootropics, like getting more sleep. And in this case, for this specific video, drinking more water, I found that, like, say, I could remember things better. I like all the mental facilities of my brain I felt were optimized just from drinking more water. And I might as well also say mental health as well. No, again, I want to stress, I'm not a licensed doctor or therapist or psychologist, none of that. So I'm just talking purely anecdotally, I want to stress, in my own subjective experience. I noticed I was happier. Maybe it's just because I'm more hydrated and I'm more upbeat, I don't know. But I did notice it affected my mood, where I felt happier throughout the day. Number 18, what about the skin and cosmetic effects? The answer, which is kind of interesting, is, like I said, I touched upon this earlier in this video. When you look at the comments, a lot of comments said, yeah, from the first shot of you talking in that video to the last shot, your skin looked noticeably better. And it makes sense. Like, you're more hydrated, your skin's more fuller. That can have a huge effect. Although I will say it's kind of like a pros and cons type thing, or looking at both sides of that coin. They have found that it's not like it necessarily makes you look younger over the years. It's not like that, like, say, if you spent the last 10 years, like I have, drinking a gallon of water a day, you're going to look younger from just drinking a gallon of water a day. I find it's more the, I don't want to say temporary, because I don't know if that's the right word. There's probably a better word for this, but maybe that's the closest word I can use right now, that it's almost like a temporary effect. That if I have a ton of water throughout the day, I do notice my skin looks better. It looks better in general. Like, cosmetically, I look way better. I look way fuller. I might even say in that moment look younger. It's not like that over time it's gonna make you look younger because of that, but it's more in that moment. That being said, with all these benefits, the cosmetic ones are definitely, I think, if anything, and especially for other people, the most noticeable effects for you, and even maybe for yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, super noticeable, the cosmetic effects of just drinking more water. Number 19, what about bloating? This is one I know that a lot of people have hit me up about, saying, hey, Mark, I want to drink more water, but I don't want to look bloated. Yes, if you do drink a ton of water, you do look a bit more bloated, but there is an asterisk to this. I want to stress that. One is I find that in the beginning, the bloat was the worst. In the beginning, your body's not really used to maybe that much water in the beginning, but then eventually it does get used to it. So that's one thing I want to say, that, yeah, water bloating can be a real thing, but not as big of a deal as you think. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing, which is very counterintuitive for a lot of people, is talking about alcohol now, which I already briefly touched upon, is bloating related to alcohol. As we all know, alcohol, especially beer, which is the worst alcohol really you can have, bloats you. That being said, although it may seem a bit counterintuitive, having more water, when, let's say, consuming beer, drinking more water can actually reduce that bloating. And it seems counterintuitive. Like, you've probably been there where you drink, let's say, a ton of beer, like you have a crazy weekend, or you're consuming a lot of beer, sometimes your face might look bloated or your stomach might look bloated. By having more water in addition to the beer, even though at first you might be like, whoa, I don't have more liquid to look even more bloated, but having more water, it actually helps reduce that bloating. Number 20, what is my timing throughout the day? This is another one, because if you are trying to do this, at first it can be a bit daunting. Like, it was actually harder than I expected. And overall, like I said, when I did do that experiment 10 years ago, I just had that water bottle, and I think every 2 to 3 hours, I was like, okay, I gotta refill it and drink it. But in general, one thing I do suggest, like I've already mentioned a couple times throughout this video, is try to front load it. Try and drink as much water as you can before bedtime, just because there's nothing more annoying than having to get up over and over again to go to the bathroom. And you kind of do that thing where you go to the bathroom, but you're trying to still kind of be tired so you don't lose the ability to fall right back asleep. Try to drink more water in the morning and maybe even around noon time, and then kind of maybe taper off if you can before the nighttime, so you can have a really good night's sleep. Number 21, were you less sick? Now, I will say, during that experiment, I didn't get sick, so I was fine. But looking the past 10 years, I will say one kind of weird, I never get sick. Like, I very rarely get sick. I did get COVID, which was horrible, but I really never get sick. Maybe it's because of the water. Maybe it's because of other stuff, I don't know. But as we all know, when it comes to, like, say, just being sick in general, being hydrated, drinking a lot of water is one of the staples of trying to get better. Number 22, does it make you thirstier though? The answer is yes. My body's right now so used to drinking 1 to 2 gallons of water a day that, let's say there's a day where I just haven't had that much water, I definitely feel it way more. My body's so used to having that much water throughout the day, almost every day, that when there's a rare day where I don't, I definitely feel the effects way stronger, way more prevalent. Like, it's way more noticeable. That being said, like I said, I think it's kind of a good thing. That's the way I look at it, that I'm like, hey, it forces me to drink more water. It's kind of the same effect that for me now, I work out so much that when I have a day off from the gym, or let's say take a few days off from the gym, I almost get like antsy or get this itch or this craving to want to go back to the gym. Same thing with water. Number 23, did you ease into it? No. I think if you're going to do this, I'd suggest doing it. Like, I'm the kind of person, if I'm going to do something, like go big or go home, which is both good and bad, for better or for worse, right? When it comes to this though, I do suggest, if you, like, say, don't drink that much water at all, maybe start out with just doing a half gallon. Like, I have to do a half gallon a day. Maybe get used to that for like 5-6 days. Maybe do it for a week or whatever. Then you work up to, like, say, 3/4 of a gallon or 1 gallon. I will say that I've noticed any huge negative thing from drinking a gallon of water a day out of nowhere. It's not like your body's going to go crazy or have this huge reaction. The worst that happens is you have to pee a lot. That's honestly the worst thing. That's the worst thing that's going to happen, is you have to go to the bathroom constantly and you're like, oh my God, this is relentless. Like, that's probably going to be the worst thing that happens. So it's not like one of those situations with some supplements or whatnot that I suggest easing into it. There's a lot that are like that, or some fitness regimens or some things in general in life. It's important to ease into it. But I think easing into it though, that being said, is never a bad idea if you want to do so. Number 24, what is your water drinking strategy? This is a surprisingly big question I get, because I've had some people be like, hey Mark, I just can't do it. I just can't drink a gallon of water a day. I don't know how to. I feel like I'm drinking randomly. Like, is there any strategy that you have? One, like I said already a few times, I make sure that any single time I have anything, even a mini scoop of pre-workout, a normal scoop of protein powder, greens, whatever, I make sure to fill this up to the brim. That way, I'm making sure that I'm having extra water. Same thing with the coffee. I make sure to have a big coffee. I also make sure to have the half gallon. That way, in my mind, if I am trying to, like, be very strict about making sure that I have to hit that gallon of water a day, I only have to have this thing twice. I mean, if, let's say, you want to find a really good gallon water bottle as well, you only have to drink it once. There are also water bottles that I've seen works on them, which is kind of cool. I mean, I tried them out. It didn't really work for me, but I know it works for a lot of people, that it almost kind of gives you like checkpoints. Like, hey, it's 2 p.m. Have you drank the water up until that 2 p.m. mark, and then 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. Really cool idea. I got to say, this is a very clever idea when it comes to water bottles. It's just one of those things that now that ball's rolling and the momentum's been there and I'm so used to it for the past decade, I just drink water in general, regardless of whatever I'm doing. I'm constantly having more water. Number 25, do you offset items and have more water as a result? What I mean is, if, let's say, I have something that's super salty, do I have extra water to compensate? If, let's say, I have an alcoholic drink, do I have extra water to compensate? Yes. And in general, I do try to do this to balance it out. I think especially, like I mentioned, with alcohol, that's the biggest one. If I have a beer, I do try to have a cup of water. If I have a shot, cup of water. If I have a mixed drink, cup of water. Basically, for any standard alcoholic drink, I do try to compensate or kind of balance it out as best I can with another cup of water. Number 26, are there any negative aspects, or did you notice any negative aspects? Actually, there are 3 for me that I've noticed throughout the past 10 years. 1, going to the bathroom more. Pretty self-explanatory. 2, in the beginning, the mental stress. It was kind of annoying, I'm not gonna lie, when doing this thing when I first did it, of drinking a gallon of water a day for 40 days, that every one of those days, I kept having to refill that water bottle 5 times a day, which is annoying. That's why I suggest get a bigger water bottle. It really helps. It was more of the mental stress, I think, because I forced myself to have to do it. Like now, if I don't drink a gallon of water in a day, I'm like, whatever, right? But then, because I wanted to do it as part of the challenge, I forced myself to. So I think the second kind of negative thing I'd say is sometimes the mental stress of, like, especially in the beginning. Now I'm used to it, but especially in the beginning, just forcing yourself to constantly drink more and more water can almost feel time consuming, a bit, I don't even say stressful, where you're like, oh man, I need to drink more water. Like, oh my God. Like, so that's the second thing. And the third thing is I am more thirsty, and I am thirsty on the days where I don't have enough water. I look at that as a positive thing, that it does force me to drink more water to be healthier. And last, number 27, what is the biggest thing I learned? What is the biggest thing I learned doing that experiment 10 years ago or a decade ago where I drank a gallon of water a day for 40 days? And even in the 10 years leading up to now filming this video, what is the biggest thing I learned? Honestly, how powerful drinking more water can be. I think that's probably the biggest thing out of anything. Like the one point that I can make is that, again, like I talked about nootropics or building muscle or whatever, that a lot of people look at like, oh, I have to take this one supplement. I have to do this new workout program. I have to do X, Y, and Z. I have to do this to achieve better mental focus. And there's a lot of different ways and obviously things out there to achieve those results of building muscle, whatever. But sometimes the most simple can be the most effective. Like I mentioned, sleep. Sleep is one of the best things you can do. There was a tweet posted by Huberman as well. I know I've mentioned him a few times already. We said, what's the best nootropic? Sleep, et cetera, right? That just shows how powerful sleep can be. And likewise, it is crazy that when people come to me and say, hey, I'm trying to build more muscle. I'm trying to get better at this marathon. I'm trying to focus better at work. Do you have any tips or tricks? What supplements can I take? I say water. And they're like, yeah, I know. But and they kind of skip over it. I'm like, no. I don't think you understand. Just by drinking more water, which is super simple, super easy, and it's pretty crazy that to achieve all these results and to get all the results that I've gotten in terms of the benefits, it is literally just drinking more water. One of the easiest things to do and obtain, and it's incredible that when it comes to these very noticeable physical benefits and mental benefits and all this kind of stuff, and my workflow was better, with say making music and making videos, with working out in the gym, all these kind of things I've talked about throughout this video, it's just by drinking more water. And I've mentioned this already a few times throughout this video, that I've gotten better benefits from just drinking more water than actual supplements that I've taken. I found I could build more muscle by drinking more water than taking an actual muscle building supplement sometimes. I found that, say, I could focus better and have more mental flow by just drinking more water than by taking, say, a nootropic or something else. I cannot suggest enough, in general, how underrated it is to just drink more water and how insanely phenomenal the benefits are.